All right, today on Free Field Training, we are taking a look at the concept of a patrol-designated marksman rifle. Now, patrol-designated marksman rifles are kind of a controversial topic in a lot of law enforcement circles, especially in urban areas. I think most of the reason is from a misunderstanding of what you might want to use something like this for. We'll get into what this is here in a minute. The notion is that we're going to use some type of magnified optic to be able to shoot at longer range. And in a suburban or an urban setting like the area that I work in, a lot of agency administrators, firearms instructors, guys who've been on the street a long time, kind of like me, but guys who've been on the street for a long time, don't understand what you would want magnified optics, especially something like a 1:6, 1:8, 1:10 for out on the road. So I decided to explore this. My agency doesn't really have designated marksmen, and the idea when you bring it up mostly gets met with, well, that's a SWAT thing, that's sniping. And sniping and a designated marksman rifle for patrol are two very, very different things. We're not thinking we're going to sit up across the street from a barricaded gunman and be able to take him out as he's holding a hostage. The idea is really more to use an optic, something like this, in order to positively identify what it is we're looking at, so that we can make sure what we're shooting at is what we're supposed to be shooting at, especially in low light and adverse conditions. So in order to explore this concept, I contacted a company that I saw had a bunch of reviews online. This is from Gunner, G-U-N-N-R. It's their Odin 1:6. It's a 28 millimeter optic. It's an LPVO. It comes with little strappy things. And it's kind of the base entry level into what you could use for patrol designated marksman work to be able to better identify somebody at kind of from across the street distances without needing to spend oodles and oodles and oodles of money. These are really affordable. They got back to me and they offered up their 1:8, 1:10 first focal plane, awesome, perfect, cool guy version of their optic. And I said, no, actually what I'm looking for is something with a very reasonable magnification range, good illumination, and extremely clear glass. Something that's going to give me a lot of light transmission even when I'm at full power, because I'm going to be using and testing this primarily at night when I'm working. It doesn't work for me if it only works during the day. And they sent this out probably close to 9 months ago now in order for me to play with it. So what I did was I mounted this up on my old duty rifle. The rifle, of course, for my purposes in a city, I don't need an 18-inch bull barrel DMR rifle with all sorts of bells and whistles. Probably don't even need a bipod to do the types of things that I'm going to be doing with it. The idea is from across the street distances to be able to tell, is that thing in that person's hand a gun, or are they just wearing a black glove? Is that thing in that person's hand a knife, or is it their cell phone with a white case? And those types of things can be kind of difficult at night from across the street distances, say 40, 50 yards. And then looking further from there, how far out across football fields, parking lots, shopping malls, things like that, can you actually see with this? So I mounted this up, shot it on my rifle, and got some pretty good groups with it. It seems to be holding zero just fine for our purposes. As you can see here, this is some zeroing shots with it, and then finally I've got my 200-yard shot. Had kind of some horizontal stringing, and I think that has more to do with this not having a bipod and me kind of monopoding it on the ground, and maybe it was rocking back and forth a little bit, or even better, we'll blame it on the wind. It was totally the wind that caused that horizontal stringing. But as you can see, it's holding well enough to make 200-yard shots pretty easily on a chest target on somebody that's kind of man-sized. So for my purposes, working in a city, that's going to work just fine for me. I'm sure I could sit down, put a bipod on this, put it on a slightly better rifle, and do better if I had all day with it. But for field conditions, for what I'm likely to run across, I think that's a pretty accurate representation of what can be done with this with a good rifle shooter. Not that I'm the best rifle shooter in the world, but, I can hit you at 200 yards, especially if I've got some magnification behind me. And remember, for patrol applications, most people, I think even today, are doing a 50-200 0, probably never even confirming at 200. They're just shooting at 50 and hoping it's good to 200, because most law enforcement shootings are happening well inside of that envelope. So for our purposes, for across the street distances, cross parking lot, 200 is going to be more than enough to be able to make good hits. Now, obviously, this scope that I'm using being a budget option, and this rifle that I'm using being the ultimate budget option, in that I already owned it and it has been sitting in my safe since I got a new duty rifle, this isn't something that's off the charts crazy expensive that your agency is going to have to drop $5,000 on. It's just kind of a proof of concept. Could this work? Would it be useful? And I think, honestly, that it is for the distances and the things that I'm talking about. At night, the second focal plane, it has beautiful, beautiful glass. You can see really clearly at night at full magnification at 6 power, and the illumination inside is really good. Now, if we flip over to daytime, it is super clear during the day. It's actually very, very clear glass. I was very impressed, especially at this price point, with how clear the glass was. And the optics, the illumination inside the optic, it wasn't red dot bright. Like everybody knows, every optic comes, it's red dot bright when they have a magnified optic. It's not going to be red dot bright really most of the time, but it's bright enough where you can clearly see it. But if you get to the point that it's so bright out that you need the dot to be brighter, you don't just have a dot, you also have the crosshairs and the center dot on the rifle sight. So you're pretty set for really, really bright daytime and into the night to actually be able to see where it is that you're aiming. So what I learned running this around is that for across the street distances, it makes it very clear. You can much more easily tell if the thing in somebody's hand is a knife or a cell phone with a silver case on it, or if it's a gun or they're just wearing a black glove and doing this. And that's harder to tell in the dark of the night, especially without good street lights at a distance than you would normally think. But you can kind of see here that it gets you real close in at 6 power. At 50 yards, it's more than enough to be able to start identifying those things, especially if you combine it with, hey, somebody over here is going to put a spotlight on the guy while I'm checking it out and seeing, okay, is that really a knife? And hopefully we're working as a team, so if somebody's barricaded in a house and they come out, we've already got a bunch of lights on them, and we're giving them directions, and if they come outside waving like this, I'm going to be able to see with a magnified optic whether this is a gun or if it's their cell phone or if it's a glove in their hand a whole lot easier. And that's kind of been my experience with it. Now, up close, that's kind of where this falls off, especially up close at night. This, after using it for a while, I've realized screams for an offset red dot or a piggyback red dot mount. I'm kind of surprised that this gunner company doesn't make a piggyback mount where you can put a little red dot optic up here. I think that would be a great addition to this, and it would allow you to kind of flex between normal patrol rifle duties and having a designated marksman rifle. Although I think most people who are going to kind of look at this setup might not want the dot over the top because these actually are kind of heavy. It's significantly heavier than you would expect altogether. I think people might want to have a separate upper with this on it, and then be able to switch to their patrol rifle so they can have one rifle but two uppers that they can switch between depending on what they want to do. And I think that might be the way that I go with this project long term if we get it all approved by the agency. The other application that I thought of with it is situations where we've got long distances, long hallways at schools, long hallways, big long areas at malls, parking lots. You start getting into a more rural mindset with it. And in that, I think you would need a separate setup rifle, because when you're going into that situation, you might think, oh, I'm going to be at short distances. Oh, nope. Now we've got this big long hallway shot. We've got 40, 50 yards, and we need to be able to ID exactly who it is among the sea of other things that are going on. Now, 15, 20 years ago, that would have been a problem. Well, how are we going to make this flex in all those applications? But today, I'm showing up at bar shootings, and I'm getting out of the car, and it's like, that guy's got a rifle, that guy's got a rifle, she's got a rifle, this one's got a shield, that one's got a rifle. How many people with rifles do we need? Now we've got nobody that goes hands-on. So being able to add something like this in where somebody on shift is, all right, well, this is a niche application the way 20 years ago a rifle was a niche application, where when I first started carrying a rifle, I was the only one carrying a rifle. Well, today, everybody's carrying a rifle, maybe one or two people per shift that are set up with designated marksman rifles might add a level of flexibility for the circumstances we get into. If we're going into a school together as a group of 6 people to start clearing portions of hallway, maybe 2 people are hands-on, and 2 people have normal patrol rifles with dot optics and lights on them, and 1 person has a DMR with something like a white phosphor laser light attached to it, or a really high candela light attached to it, so that we can hold hallways at really long distance with that rifle. Now, is this particular scope from Gunner, this Odin 1-6x28, is this going to be long-term durable for patrol use where I can like let this rattle around in a squad car? And here's where I have to give everybody the bad news. I don't think I would put a low-power variable optic like this, or any magnified optic that wasn't specifically ruggedized for military use, in that situation, because we all know it's going to sit in the cradle and it's going to be locked in, and it's going to be rattling all day and vibrating and vibrating and vibrating until something breaks. These aren't really known for their durability, especially if they're not properly cased. So if I was going to carry this around, I would keep it in a case, and I would take it out when I needed it, and I would be kind of gentle with it in relative terms to the way I normally beat up a patrol rifle when I'm out working with it. But for the once or twice a month where you might think, hey, I need this, and pop the upper off of your patrol rifle and pop the upper on this, or where you're going to take your designated marksman rifle out of the car and go into a building with it to clear something, I think this is probably going to be more than durable enough. Some downsides for this particular scope that I found in using it, there is no quick disconnect on their available scope mounting. So if you need to take this off in order to run iron sights, or to switch out to a dot optic, or you just want to be able to throw lever it off and throw lever it back on, you're thinking, well, I could just take the optic off and then mark the rails and mount the optic back on, and it's going to be good enough for government work. You can't do that with their supplied mount. It's all with torque screws. Also, if you are thinking, hey, I'm just going to leave the illumination on all the time, you think you're just going to leave this on at the power you want it at when you're on duty, and then you're going to come back the next day and it's not going to still be on, and the next day still be on, you're going to forget about it, and the battery's going to die. Take it from me. I did that, and I forgot about it. And a couple weeks later I came back and there was no more illumination in it. So it doesn't have a feature where it's shake awake, or that it automatically shuts off after 8 hours like we're used to with many, many dot optics, or the lifespan of the battery for the illumination like an aim point where we can just leave it on and forget about it. It doesn't have that. You're going to have to remember to turn this on and then turn it off each time you're taking it in and out. On the plus side, there is a setting on here. The knob that adjusts it allows you to flip it to whatever your setting is, and then you click it once to get it to the off setting, and then you can click it back to get it to the on setting. Just one setting instead of having to do the whole crank through the way you would be used to from an aim point, where to shut it off, you have to crank it all the way to 0. This has off 1, off 2, off 3, off 4. So if you want to leave it at 6, you can leave it off, and then when you get out, you click it to 6. And if you accidentally flip it to 5, it's not that huge of a deal because the differences in illumination aren't that big between the two of them. One thing that I heard a lot of other people complaining about is that there isn't a counter for the elevation or the windage on this. So there's markings for your elevation and windage in case you're going to use this as some sort of sniper scope. Realistically, for patrol work, we aren't ever touching this after it's zeroed. We're going to zero it, we're going to mark it that that's the 0, and then it's zeroed for 5200, and that's where we're going to leave it. I'm not going to a competition where I'm going to change what my elevation or windage is on the fly when I've got it out on the street. It's going to be locked in, set for 0 is 0 for 50 yards, and then I'm never going to touch it again. So there not being a counter where you can figure out, am I at 0, or am I at 3, or am I at 28, or am I at 53? Doesn't matter. It's just going to always stay at 0, and I'm going to lock it back to 0 if I do move it for any reason. The scope itself came in a handy dandy box, which is beautiful. Not quite TSA compliant for using as a gun case for airlines, but more than enough if once you get the scope out of it, you want to take it and use it for some other application, throw it in the bed of the pickup truck or behind the seat of your car to protect some piece of camera equipment, which is what I'm using it for, or to protect a pistol or to store ammunition or something in. It's actually a pretty nice case. It's an added little bonus, but if what we're looking at is the scope, that's how well the scope works. I would put a offset red dot on it for close in if I was going to use this as my one rifle to do it all, which I wouldn't. And it gets the job done well enough where I think it's worth looking into, if I'm going to keep going with this project, mounting this to something that's a little more set up for longer distance use, or maybe getting a designated upper for just this application that isn't, you know, kind of shot out and old. Or maybe upgrading to a higher quality of optic, or looking at some higher quality, more expensive optics and seeing if I'm actually gaining or losing something from that. So stick around for all of that. That is my initial thoughts on my patrol designated marksman project using my old patrol rifle and an optic that I got for free. Until next week, you guys be safe. Take care of each other. That's been your free field training for today. While you're here, check out one of the other videos that we made, or down here, subscribe so you can see more. Or you could check out Patreon, where you can see how you can get your name put on the videos, like all these fine folks over here. I'll see you guys next time.